There's been a lot of discussion around Common Core, and as my colleague just pointed out, there's been a lot of time to discuss that of late. And I just want to kind of start off with a discussion over exactly what we're talking about in regards to Common Core standards, and because I think it's illustrative of where the key concerns are of folks like myself when it comes to the adoption of these standards. When you start talking about an education system is actually a kind of a layered cake model, where you've got education standards up at the top, you've got an assessment tool that verifies whether or not you're complying with those standards at the next tier, and then that hands off to what happens at the local school district level, which is curriculum development and also the course materials and the lesson plans developed by our teachers. At stake here, and I've heard a lot of discussions, a lot of people talking about the fact that they make the claim that Common Core standards are actually a higher quality standard. And I follow that statement up with the standard question of, well, can you demonstrate that it's going to improve student performance? Because we need to make sure that we're focused on the end game here, which is improved student performance. And when I've asked that, I was referred to a report that said that this is what validates the fact that this is higher student performance. And in that report it says, and I quote, "Unfortunately, determining the relationship between these new standards and achievement will take several years." This is from the author of the person who's of a report by a person that was stating that this was something that was going to improve our student achievement. In other words, despite the push for increased accountability, we will now have an accountability vacation of, quote unquote, several years. Furthermore, the failure to restrict Michigan Department of Ed dollars to the developing a Michigan-controlled assessment tool opens the door to some controversial to the controversial deployment of some of kits, essentially, to help local school districts better align with Common Core. And that's where a lot of the problems are in regards to Common Core, frankly, deal with some of the centralized district helpers, if you will, that are coming out of the Common Core Standards Initiative. Some of these course materials that are coming out in particular are, can be described more as indoctrination as opposed to education. Now, to be clear, these materials are generally depicted as recommended materials. They're not required for the school districts at all. But they do make it easier for the school districts to go off and deploy these materials. Now, I want to give a couple examples of some of these materials that people in my district, my constituents, my friends have cited to me that give me pause in regards to making sure that we've got a firewall that protects our local school districts from this content. One third-grade reading text teaches kids, it's a textbook that teaches kids under the guise of rights and responsibility training how to protest. Another textbook talks about and frames the Second Amendment as the people that are in a state militia have the right to bear arms. Other suggested reading materials that can be found in the appendix of some of the deployment materials for Common Core refer to textbooks such as the Bluest Eye that have pornographic content. I bring these to my colleagues' attentions because I want to reflect upon a quote from Abraham Lincoln. He said that the philosophy of education in one generation will be the philosophy of government in the next generation. And when I see some of these points that are going into this course material here, I fear for my next generation of government. Now, to be sure, Common Core is not a federal standard, as some have claimed, but it is a national standard. And it's a national standard that will be increasingly referenced by our federal government as a tool to influence state education policies. Like so many other programs coming out of DC today, unfortunately, I believe that Common Core is more seen as a tool for control than about true reform. To get true educational excellence, what we need is accountability, not less accountability, more accountability. What we need is local control, more local control, not less local control. And what we need is school choice and good teachers to staff those schools with our kids.